Hey everybody, it's Jimmy. Just wanted to catch up on what we're doing around here. Started out, as you can see, I've thrown up a fence here. We got us a couple of calves. Got a bull calf and then a little heifer added to the mix. They're way out there. I know you can't see them, but they're having a good time, getting to know each other, and we're kind of doing our little cattle thing now on the homestead here. But I wanted to catch you up real quick. I always like this perspective of the place. It just looks cool. They've got the morning sun shining on it and just a perspective. But I want to do a couple things today. I'm going to show you what we've been up to, and then I want to talk a little bit about some planning and such. So if you recall, I had a gap I was going to have to overcome, and I set that wall and ended up with about 1.5 inches or so gap all the way around up there. I was like, how am I going to overcome that? Well, in the building process, you get these L brackets. It's sheet metal. It's not too flimsy, but it's flimsy enough to work with. These are actually form brackets that you're supposed to put on each side and down the top as you build your building to keep it in line, to keep it tight. And I did that, and it worked. But I had a bunch of them left over. And I got to looking at it, and I started thinking, man, if I come back and I just score the inside of it, I can bend that, and it'll form a gap concealer, if you will. And then right now I got to finish. I ran out of 100% silicone. I got to I'm filling that gap, that furthest gap out there. It might be prone to weather. And then I'm going to come in behind it with big gap spray foam and completely fill that cavity. See, I'll come back in there with big gap spray foam, and there won't be any air coming in there at all. Weatherproof, watertight, airtight, you name it. I got to go upstairs and show you, we've been working on some ductwork, getting the Hvac system up, which is, a big deal. It's a big expense. It's also quite a bit of work. And so I've been running ductwork. I built this cradle to hang the unit on. I went with a LG 2-ton. That's what my energy study called for, mini split. But it's a ducted mini split. There's ductless, where you have the head units hanging in every room. We went with a ducted system, so it'll be just vents, air blowing, just like you have in a normal conventional home. But it's still a mini split system with the power and the efficiency and all of that, so we're real excited about that. I ran this box, well, this first line out. There's 2 lines, supplementary lines coming out of there. Those supply. All of my return ducts are down on the other end. They're done. But it's coming along nicely. Should be able to wrap that up here pretty quick. Now we got some cabinets lined up. My wife's working on. She's doing some sanding, painting, whatnot to get this thing going. So not a whole lot. Oh, finally, we're building a house in Georgia here at the same time, believe it or not. Different kind of home, just a regular stick house, but all the insulation is EPS foam, different thicknesses from 8 or 9 inches down to 1.5 inches, 2. So we had quite a bit left over from our other builds. So guess what? We're going to recycle that, put it up in our ceiling joist to add even more insulation, more efficiency. To me, that's the name of the game. Back to that whole passive house theory is we want this thing to be as efficient as possible. That's the less that the HVAC's got to run, and we're more comfortable in here, energy cost savings, and just you can rattle them all off on down the line. I still got to do the hallway. But those are my 3 supply vents. out here into the main space. But really what I wanted to talk to you about, I see a lot of folks get online and, oh, I'm so glad to be part of this group, which is a Facebook group that I'm a part of called DIY Quonset Dwellers. Actually, there's a couple of them that I'm a part of. And, you know, throw comments out every now and then, but I thought I would just take a moment and give you my 2 cents on, so you want to live in a Quonset hut? Well, from my experience, let me just give you some things to think about before you get on there and start asking a bunch of silly questions that either people have already asked 14 times or that you haven't thought of. And listen, I'm not the world's expert. Again, this is my 2 cents based off my experience, and I just want to share this with you. And this is the first part in probably a 3 or 4 part series. This is just the initial planning phase. So in my mind, there's like 2 categories of folks. You got the folks with unlimited budgets, and they're building these big whiz-bang 2-story things, all the bells and whistles, and that's good, and I'm proud for you. But that's not me. That's not us. I'm talking about, and I fall into, we have a limited budget, and we're going to do a lot of it ourselves. Again, to save money. And as I tell my wife, you know, you've either got the money to pay for it to do something, or you've got the time to do it. In my case, I've got the time and I've got a little bit of money, so we're gonna make it happen. Anyway, with that said, again, I'm talking about the limited budget folks and the DIYers, or you know, I subbed out a little bit, but not a lot, based off our budget. So the first thing to do, obviously, you have to set a budget. You've got to have in mind what it's going to take. Now, I see people all the time asking, well, what did you spend on yours? You know, it depends really on the size of building that you want to build and what you want to have in it. How much you're going to frame out. Is it going to be your total living space, or are you going to do half living, half shop like we did? It really depends. You know, I think $7,500, $100,000 is probably a reasonable budget. That doesn't mean it's going to cost that much. That means I have to have that much available to catch overruns and the like. But you got to start with a budget first. The next place I would go is start calling the county building permit office. They're going to answer a lot of questions for you, especially if you're in a place where you're going to have to get this thing permitted. So they're going to give you answers about what the permit schedule looks like, the inspection schedule, sorry. For us, it's every 6 months. You got to tick off a new inspection, or you got to start all over and pay the permit fee again. I know there's counties in Tennessee that don't even require a permit to build. So, I mean, it really depends on where you are in the world to start asking those kind of questions. But I would start there, then you know where to go. By that, I mean you either know where to go in your planning and execution of your plan, or you know that you need to move somewhere else because you can't meet the standards or don't want to. It's as simple as that. And we actually had considered that at one point. Also understand, if you're talking to the permit office, you got the permit fees, and then you might have impact fees. Be sure and ask that question because they vary as well. It could be zero. It could be thousands of dollars like we've experienced. And they change. It does change from time to time based off what's going on in the county. Once you've got all those questions asked, or at least to your satisfaction, the next thing I would ask you is, do you own your land, or are you going to buy some land? This to me is one of the big ticket items, and probably the long pole in the tent in terms of, can I really do this? Because the problem is if you want to try to get a construction loan, good luck. They're just very, very hard to get. I'm not saying they can't be done. We had money saved up. We sold a house, and so we've paid as we go. Everything that I've showed you, we've paid for along the way. We didn't take out any loans, nothing like that. So we don't have a mortgage at all. We're cashing in things, money that we thought we was going to use later, but we wanted to use now, and on and on and on. Or I'll take a contract job here and there and make some money, and so that's what we've been doing. But if you own your land, you're way ahead of the game. So if you're able to get some, that's great. Or if you've got the money to buy some, that's great as well. Land and geography play a big part in this too, because you've got to consider what's it going to take to clear the land. What's the soil perk test going to show? Am I going to be able to put a septic tank in? Do I need to put a well? Is there already a well on the place? Am I going to be able to tap into city or county water? Lots of considerations here, and I'm just kind of scraping the top of the surface here, but just to give you some things to think about, because they all impact your budget. Back to that very first one. All of these things that I'm talking about, just laying in here that I'm discussing, impact your budget, and sometimes considerably. For example, if you, in certain counties in Florida, if you want to build a 3-bedroom, 2-bed, or 3-bedroom, 2-bath Quonset hut that's going to have, 2,000, 2,200 living space square footage, you're going to have a nitrogen reducing septic system, and that's considerably more than just a regular 900-gallon 2-chamber tank and 375 foot of drain field. It matters. You have to ask those questions first. And we haven't even got to the hut yet. But let me talk about that real quick. There are different styles of Quonset huts. You've got the Q model, which is the traditional, very rounded radius type. You have the S model, which is what we bought, which has a 4-foot straight wall, and then it begins to radius. And I'm going to show you the impact of that here in just a second. So I've told y'all all along that we had a 40 by 70 pad. Okay? We do not have 40 by 70s worth of living space. What I mean by that is, we went with the base plates. So there's 9.5 inches gone off both edges. So 40 wide minus 19 now. So we're down, we'll just use one side in particular. So there's 9.5 inches for the base plate. And oh, by the way, when you drop a plumb line for an 8-foot wall, which I did, and if you don't have a plumb bob in your tool bag, it's a lick on you. One of the most useful things you can ever buy. So again, from the pad, edge of the pad, 9.5 inches, there's the edge of it, and then I dropped a 8-foot plumb line for my cabinetry wall in here in the kitchen. We lost another 20 inches. Okay? Something to consider. So when you think, well, if it's 40 foot wide, and just do beer math, 40 by 70 or 40 by 60, well, that's 240 or 2,400 square foot. Well, no, it's not. And not in this case. Like I said, I lost 20 plus another 9. I lost almost 30 inches on each side of this building before we even got started. So, I'll talk about plans and all that in a later segment here. The biggest, and then there's a model, which has 8-foot straight walls, and then it starts to radius, and so you're not going to lose as much space. But you're going to lose some amount of space on the edges when you start down this road. You need to know that. Remember I showed you the build out here in, this is our master. And we had such space there, we had some leftover upper cabinets that we could fill this space in. and still got room to spare. I mean, literally, that's how much room we lost, or how much space we lost from the edge of the building. Pretty significant. Now, I've seen people take an S model with a 4-foot wall and build it on a 4-foot concrete knee wall. That's cool. If I had it to do over, I'd probably consider that, but it would just depend on what type of building I could get my hands on. Again, we'll discuss those kind of options in a later segment. So let's say you figure out what style of Q hut you want. Now you can start sketching out the floor plans. Get you some graph paper and just actually get a napkin and just start drawing it out. I mean, literally, we took just a regular piece of notebook paper and sketched ours out, gave it to the structural engineer. They put it into their system, and then we could see what we're actually dealing with. When you talk in terms of spaces and how wide is a hall got to be, what's a reasonable size for a bathroom, doorways, but you can do that kind of stuff. You can do that. If you're a DIY person like me, you're going to do this. You're going to sketch it out. And I know the SketchUp and all of that's out there. You can get real fancy with it, but you can do that. As I've said all along, a structural engineer has got to get a hold of this thing at some point, because a structural engineer designed this wall, not me. I built it, but a structural engineer, and they actually came out and walked the ground with me and looked at it and said, yep, you done good, which I was proud of. That's Jason and my buddy Jason and the guys at Wilson and Jerzenti Engineering. But engineering's a big deal. Now, I talked about geography and location. So I'm in Florida. It's this hurricane-rated building, and that's a hurricane-rated front wall. You got to have engineering in this thing. You really do. The building will come with a stamped set of plans, or it should, based off your region where you're building. And you got to be able to consider snow load, wind load, wherever you're at. It's got to meet those parameters. But we'll talk more in depth about that later. But sketch out your floor plan and decide what you want to do. Ultimately, and I've had people come out, visit now, and keep getting phone calls, which I enjoy, like I said all along, and I will continue to field those questions. And if you're close, you want to come out, feel free to come out and we can talk. If you want to call it consulting, that's fine with me too, but I'm here to help you. And I hope this helps. If you got questions, call me, write me, find me on Facebook. That's usually where I hang out the most. I don't have any of those other accounts. But my YouTube channel and the Quonset hut is where I basically reside. But feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to help you, and hopefully I'll be part of some projects here pretty soon, and some realistic DIY projects that we can show off to people that are like me. Have a limited budget, but you got enough money to do something, and you got a little bit of skill and some time, and so you want to make it a reality. And I'll be there with you if I can. Anyway, thanks for watching, and stay tuned. There's more to come. See ya.